The topic of money is so broad that I'll keep coming back to it. That's why I've created a special playlist just for these stories. Feel free to subscribe to follow along. For as long as I can remember, even as a child, I always had money. My attitude towards money back then was tied to a simple ritual. Every week, I'd carefully put a single banknote into a small, white leather wallet. Then I'd tuck that wallet into a black and green pouch, and finally hide the pouch inside the flat head of a big plush bear hanging on the wall. It was an Olympic bear from 1980. It had a huge head that doubled as a pocket and a tiny body wrapped with an Olympic belt. At any moment, there was usually about half of an adult's monthly salary hidden inside that bear. Sometimes, I even lent money to my parents, never expecting it back. Now, you might wonder, where did this money come from? Every week, my parents and I visited my grandparents, my father's parents. My grandfather's character was both uncommon and hard to bear. First, most people didn't really like him because of his sharp tongue, constant criticism, and sarcastic remarks. Second, everyone knew he was incredibly stingy and very wealthy. And he really did have a fortune by Soviet standards. I remember the shock I felt when I saw the balance in his savings book, 48,000 ruble. This was back in 1986, when the average monthly salary in the USSR was just 150 rubles, and a brand new ladder, the one my grandfather bought for my father, cost 5,500 rubles. My grandfather really was pathologically frugal. He never bought himself any clothes. He spent his entire life wearing the free work gear from the mine. He ate at the miner's canteen and lived on the bare minimum. Every month he received both his salary and a pension, and he would save about 70% of it in the bank, living only on the remaining 30%. He also had a passion for collecting. He gathered old coins and banknotes, medals and military decorations, and even some antiques. What stuck in my memory most were an SS officer's leather trench coat from World War II and a bayonet pierced by a bullet, decorated with an eagle and a swastika. He didn't actually buy any of these things. Instead, he got them for free from elderly women who lived alone, helping them with chores, chopping wood, moving coal, building fences. My grandparents lived in a shared house for 4 families, each with its own entrance and a piece of land. Interestingly, this house was built in Siberia at the end of the 1920s by American workers from sunny California. Its design really didn't suit the harsh local climate. The rooms had lots of tall windows, many of which had to be boarded up later. These miners' houses, as well as the mines themselves, were built with the Tsar's gold. The Tsar was murdered. His gold was seized by the revolutionaries led by Lenin, and all that wealth was used to build the young Soviet Russia. Even as a child, I could sense how history was deeply woven into our daily lives. At the end of every visit, just before we left, my grandfather would take from his large pocket some folded pieces of newspaper. Hidden between the pages were back. He'd pull one out, usually a 10-ruble note, and hand it to me. One day I asked him, "Grandpa, why don't you have a wallet?" He smiled mysteriously and said, "Money loves paper. Paper sticks to paper." And yet there was one thing he willingly spent a lot of money on. He was incredibly proud of his son, my father, who was quickly climbing the ranks in the police. So, every 3 years, when my father wanted to replace his car and asked for help to buy a new one, my grandfather never hesitated to say yes. Jumping ahead a bit, years later, when I bought an apartment for my father, I joked to him, "All your life, while Grandpa was alive, he helped you. Now it's my turn to help." My father simply and quietly replied, "Thank you, son." My grandfather died at the start of perestroika after a failed bowel surgery. In his final days, he fully felt fear and despair as inflation quickly ate away the fortune he had spent his whole life saving, always denying himself comfort and pleasure. Many relatives called him a fool, who never enjoyed the money he had. But even as a young man, I realized he wasn't truly foolish. Yes, he had his quirks, maybe even an obsession. But perhaps it was from this obsession that he drew energy and felt a sense of superiority over others. He clearly took real pleasure in having money and watching his bank balance grow, which can feel even stronger than buying things. After he passed away, I inherited his collection of medals and decorations. At that time, I was a university student, and by chance I had a friend who dealt in antiques. He helped me sell the entire collection in about half an hour to a group of buyers just like him. That day I walked away with around 5 kilograms of cash. I remember how one journalist spoke about that period. A wild period when the country shifted from socialism with a human face to capitalism with a wolf-esque grin. During the period of perestroika, everyone was involved in trading something due to the widespread shortage of goods. With that money, I bought 12 boxes of tracksuits from the German brand Montana. A week later, I sold them in another city and doubled my capital. With the profit, I bought many huge boxes of Swiss chocolate, sold them and doubled my money again. In just a couple of weeks, my 5 kilos of cash turned into 15 kilos. Then I took that money to Moscow and bought clothes to resell. Not everything I chose sold well. Some clothes moved slowly, and my profits gradually dissolved into daily expenses and student parties. About 6 months later, the money was gone. Later, as an adult running my own business, I often asked wealthy people I met how they related to money when they were children. Most couldn't really remember, but a few had very clear memories. One story I especially remember was from a very wealthy banker from Monaco. When I was 5, I already had pocket money, constantly touching the bills, smoothing them out with my hands, sorting them by color into little boxes. That's how I learned to count and add numbers. I loved looking at them, touching them, saving them. Even then, I knew that when I grew up I would have a lot of money. A great deal of it. I wish I'd had that kind of love for money. Personally, I've always been quite indifferent, seeing money simply as a tool. Yet somehow, I still managed to attract millions of dollars into my life. But that's a story for another time.